to our meeting, and we're now in public session. And before we begin, I want to, well, I have to, as I do at every meeting, say a short few words on privilege. Witnesses giving evidence from within the parliamentary precincts here are protected by absolute privilege in respect of the evidence to give to a committee. This means that a witness has a full defence in any defamation action for anything said at a committee meeting. However, witnesses are expected not to abuse this privilege and may be directed to cease giving evidence on an issue at my direction as Chair. Witnesses should follow the direction of the Chair in this regard and are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice to the effect that, as is reasonable, no adverse commentary should be made as against an identifiable third person or entity. Witnesses who are to give evidence from a location outside the parliamentary precincts, and I don't think that's arising in this particular meeting, but they are asked to note that they may not benefit from the same level of immunity and should take appropriate legal advice on this matter themselves. Privilege against defamation does not apply to the publication by you outside of the proceedings held by the committee of any matters arising from the proceedings. Members, I'd like to advise members of the constitutional requirements that you be physically present within the confines of the Leinster House complex in order to participate in public meetings. I will not permit a member to participate where they are not adhering to this constitutional requirement. Therefore, a member who attempts to participate from outside the precincts will be asked to leave the meeting. In this regard, I would ask any member partaking via MS Teams that prior to making their contribution to the meeting that you confirm to me verbally that you're on the grounds of the Leinster House campus. And you're reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that you should not criticise or make charges against any person or entity by name or in such a way as to make him, her or it identifiable or otherwise engage in speech that might be regarded as damaging to the good name of the person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you will be directed by me to discontinue your remarks, and it's imperative that you comply with such direction. So with that said, the agenda for today's meeting is issues affecting inshore fishing, and we know that there are many and they are serious and grave, and that's why we want to hear from representatives, and we're delighted to be joined at this meeting from officials from the National Inshore Fishermen's Association. So you're most welcome here today, and we look forward to our engagement. We have Mr. Michael Desmond, chairperson of the NIFA, Mr. John Menary and Mr. Michael Foley. John is vice chairman and Michael Foley is the head of the pelagic steering group. The witness's opening statement from the National Inshore Fishermen's Association has been circulated to members in advance of this meeting, but I'll give you a number of minutes, I would say up to 5, if you want to go through the opening statement, read it into the record or present or summarise it as you wish. So I'll leave that up to you. Then we will go to questions and answers thereafter, and I'll just ask members when the opening statement has concluded that you would indicate if you wish to speak, and I'll take a note of your name, and we'll hopefully get in 2 rounds of questions and answers if time allows. And I'd remind you to ask your question within your allotted time, which will be 10 minutes, but also to ensure you give sufficient space for the witnesses to respond. Okay? So, Arag Liv, I'll hand over to the witnesses from the National Inshore Fishermen's Association.
Thank you very much. Well, as you might have guessed, we're not here to give career advice, but first of all, I'd like to thank this committee for their invitation here today to discuss the difficulties, challenges and future opportunities of the Irish inshore fishing sector. As many of you are aware, Ireland seems to have more marine NGOs and anti-fishing social media groups than it does have actual fishermen. The vast majority of the members associated with these groups seem to have zero experience or knowledge of our vital industry, but can call for the closure of existing and important fisheries within our sector, which contributes to the economic survivability of rural coastal communities. Instead of closing current fisheries, this committee should focus on the reopening of fisheries that were unjustifiably halted by previous governments because of intense lobbying from various groups at a time when there was no producer organisation to represent us and counteract these misguided measures. French and British vessels continue to fish for bass on our very doorstep, while Irish consumers are buying imported, inferior farm fish when it could be fresh, wild-caught Irish sea bass. The same scenario applies to sea trout, salmon, eels, pollock. To reopen fisheries with sustainable management plans in place would allow our members and others to diversify their fishing activities and alleviate the pressure on the shellfish stocks. There is an immediate and urgent need for financial support for inshore fishermen, similar to those received by Oireachtas. Annually, approximately 2,000 artists receive €35 million because they are recognised as a part of this country's culture and heritage, as are we without the recognition, as well as being primary food producers of the healthiest food source available. 30 years ago, we were getting higher prices for our product than we are now, and our expenses have increased tenfold. Atlantic storms and gales are far more frequent because of climate change, so we are spending less time at sea during the winter months. Our pleas cannot go ignored once again in the upcoming budget, as they have in all previous budgets. Pelagic fish stocks are a national resource and asset. It is unconscionable that another year passes where almost the entirety of the mackerel and herring quota is given to just 50 large vessels owned by maybe 24 people. How can the minority be the main beneficiary? Some semblance of morality needs to be injected into this equation. An ever-increasing number of our membership are of the belief that the only reason for this ridiculous distribution is because of our inability to make political donations. Inshore vessels should always be allowed to land their catch in the closest port and not be obliged to travel to a designated one, often for hours in treacherous winter sea conditions. A dedicated hook and line quota for bluefin tuna must be acquired immediately. For the inshore sector, it's difficult to comprehend that vessels from all EU coastal states, as well as a fleet from the southern hemisphere, are allowed access to this stock, while again we can just observe. This particular species are more abundant than ever on our shores, and to be able to access this fishery would greatly enhance the income of inshore vessels. There has to be increased engagement from the Department of the Marine with all inshore representatives to improve results with our innumerable issues. The situation surrounding the North West Herring Committee needs immediate resolvement, as this grouping is now devoid of any inshore representation whatsoever. An impartial chair needs to be appointed from within the department with immediate effect. Access to social welfare must be improved. The Fish Assist scheme is minuscule in comparison to what is needed. Each vessel is a small business and deserves to be treated as such because of the employment it creates. Illness benefit access is also a necessity. Grant applications need a complete revamp for our sector, as those most in need are unable to avail because of the pay 100% upfront requirement. This is causing a two-tier sector. Also, a huge amount of fishermen are not computer literate, and paper copies need to be made available. In relation to the offshore renewable energy, the Irish state must ensure that all fishermen affected are adequately compensated by renewable energy companies. The brown crab working group needs to be resumed this year, and regular meetings have to take place quarterly.
Mr. Desmond, could I just ask you to conclude? We're at time, so just to summarise the last couple of points, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Climate experts say we're experiencing a climate crisis because we've lost our connectedness to nature. The people who still have this connection are inshore fishermen. Yes, it is us who are being sacrificed in the name of it. Several politicians have called for the decarbonisation of our fishing fleet, even though we have the lowest carbon footprint of all food producers. There are hundreds of small open fishing vessels using between 1 and 2 litres of fuel per hour, while alongside us at sea, eco-tourism boats, after basking sharks, dolphins and other marine mammals, are equipped with twin, 3, 4, 500 horsepower engines, emitting 100 times more carbon than us. Surely, if decarbonisation should occur in the marine sphere, wouldn't it make sense that it would be the eco-boats first, not primary producers of healthy food? There are dozens of nuclear submarines roaming the world's oceans, while the 3 of us here are deemed to be the danger to the planet, while in actual fact the inshore fishing sector could be part of the solution with small-scale, sustainable, wild-caught, fresh organic food, improving, invigorating and sustaining employment in the population in Ireland's coastal communities into the future. If the political will was there to help, hopefully this committee will be an example of that will. Good morning.
Gur míle mágad asocht sin, so ar mé tachtaí agus seanadóirí a haim a léirú maha iri kaint a dhéanamh. So I have Senator O'Reilly, then Deputy McLaughlin and Deputy Collins in that order first, and anyone else if just indicate as you catch my eye. So Raiglat a Yanador.
My God, you're very welcome here today. I'm delighted to see you here. I'm going to just ask a few questions, and about 3 questions if I can, and whoever wants to respond to them, who is best placed to respond to them, just if we can keep it brief enough so I can get the 3 questions and responses in. So I just see in your statement there that you stated that, can you explain or expand on your statement re fisheries that were unjustifiably closed, what effect it had on the local economy? Second question is to do with the impartial chair. So, impartial chair for the North West Herring Committee, what seems to be the main issue there, and can it be resolved? And just on the brown crab, the impact of it seems to be that it's an extremely important part, and there's a high percentage of inshore vessels rely on this stock, as you say in your statement. And I just was wondering, I understand the fishermen are having to put out 100 pods where they used to maybe put out 30 pods to make the same catch of crab. So what barriers are there for inshore fishermen diversifying into new species, and what do you think how do you think that the department can tackle this?
Thanks very much. I'll answer the fisheries clause question, and John can talk about the North West herring and the brown crab. The EU never ever asked Ireland to ban wild salmon fishing or bass fishing. Never asked them. They did that because of lobbying from the tourism industry, hoteliers from Athlone, Killarney, wherever else. There was no organisation to stand up for inshore fishermen at the time. And it's the same for the pelagic stocks. We do not have a quota for pelagic stocks because there was no one to represent us at the table. And because of that, in fairness, the EU now have brought about a law that you're either an inshore PO or an offshore PO. And to become an inshore producer organisation, 80% of your membership have to be 12 metres or less in length. All the other POs are 24 metres plus in length. So we are actually the only PO in Ireland that represent inshore fishermen. That's EU law. So even though they're saying they represent inshore, they're not allowed to represent inshore. And because we weren't there back then, there was no one to argue the point. Like salmon and bass in West Cork and Donegal for salmon as well. Like there was thousands of people employed all around the coastline go, and now we have thousands of anglers allowed to catch them, no problem. But we're not. It's ridiculous. Like, and instead we're eating farmed salmon, which like everyone knows it's not the same thing or nowhere near it. And like I would say we've probably lost hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in coastal communities because of the taking of these fisheries, and there's nothing to stop the Irish government from reopening these. At the time, it was a moratorium. Bass fishing was stopped. Like English and French boats are fishing bass off our coast now. Like the French boats are actually pair trawling for them. And I can't go out and shoot a net or catch a bass with a rod and line. And every bass you're eating in restaurants are farmed coming from Turkey or Asia. It's crazy. That's the fisheries clause one. I'll leave John talk about the North West herring and the brown crab as he's involved in that.
Thank you, Deputy. Just on the issue at the North West Herring Committee, from the very outset there was issues around the interpretation of the Minister's policy and the amendments made by Minister McConnell in 2023, and the sort of was basically a them and us over the interpretation of it, and we've reached out on several occasions to the department to ask them to come to a meeting to explain the policy, because we had a situation where the chair at the time was emailing about it, was getting phone calls. When he was asked about one phone call, we asked who did he get the information from, and we were told he couldn't remember who he got the information from. And the last time we discussed it at Quota Management, I asked the Principal Fishery Officer or Sea Fishery Officer in the Department of Marine, all it will take to get that committee back on track is for the very first meeting when it reconvenes, for one representative from the Department of the Marine to come to that meeting, put it on the record what is meant by what is in the policy, and we can move forward from there. But you can't have a situation where one group says it's this or it's that, or I think it's this or I think it's that. That's all it takes. One person from the Department of the Marine for 1 hour, case closed, whatever they say on the record, we're happy to move forward from that. On the issue of the brown crab is the most socio-economically important stock in Ireland, full stop. You can talk about the worth of the mackerel, etc. If the mackerel disappeared in the morning outside 50 RSW vessels for 6 weeks of the year, it would have zero effect. It would have virtually undetectable consequences for the inshore sector. But it's seen as the gold standard. That's the big thing. That's all we ever hear about. Brown crab is fished by, I'd say, 90% of the inshore sector, and that's just down to lack of opportunities. And sort of leads me on to your question about diversity. We don't need to diversify. We need to get access back to the stocks that we have been excluded from. We had access to mackerel. There was a polyvalent allocation of mackerel of 13%, and government ministerial policy has privatised that for 27 vessels, leaving 2.5% of that 13%. And when I say 2.5, that 13% is 100% of the polyvalent allocation, and then we get 2.5% of that 100%, which leaves 200 tonnes approximately for the rest of the polyvalent sector outside that 27 vessels. We do have 400 tonnes of a hook and line mackerel fishery. It's a small amount. It's not enough to make it economically viable for a lot of the fleet, because you have factories at the minute that can process up to 1,000 tonnes a day. That 400 tonnes to have it done before dinner time. The factories have got that larger scale. It's not viable for them, so that limits a lot of the markets for that product. We have the situation in Northwest Herring. When it was last reviewed by the Minister at the time, the under 10 metre vessels were excluded from any track record, regardless of whether they had track record in the fishery or not. We had a case where there's two vessels, one over 10 metres and one under 10 metres, fishing together. The vessel that was over 12 metres fulfilled the same criteria as the under 10 metre vessel, but the over 10 metre vessel got so-called track record in the fishery and was allowed access to quota, whereas the under 10 metre vessel is limited, at the time was 5% of the overall quota for the entire polyvalent sector outside. I think it's 40 vessels that can access that. We're not asking for diversification, we're asking for access to what we had access to before ministerial policy changed it. That's all we need. A lot of our issues are Irish-based. It's with the Minister, policy, interpretation of policy, enforcement of policy. We don't have issues at European level like the other larger vessels might say they do. A lot of our issues could be sorted out in the morning if the political will was there. Could be quite easily sorted, and we're not looking to take massive chunks of any sector. We're talking 3 or 4% of any quota in regards to mackerel, and what we had before, we were talking about 40% of herring fisheries, when it was the majority of the inshore fishing vessels that fished it. Because if you don't have to go that far back in history, when there was no large vessels in this country, everybody started out small. Some got big, and fair play to them, but the inshore sector has always been there.
Very good. So what you're saying is you don't believe that we should be trying to fight Europe in Europe?
From an inshore perspective, absolutely. More quota for Ireland is good. But for an inshore sector, if we can't access that quota, what is the point? Why fight a battle if you're not going to gain anything from it? We have enough to do fighting for our representatives for our members like we're doing here today. We don't need to do that in Europe. We need to basically fight our own government minister first to get access to what we always traditionally had access to.
So if I was to say that there's nowhere tougher than Irish, there's nobody tougher on Irish fisheries than Irish administration, would I be?
There's nobody tougher on inshore fishermen than present ministerial policy, no.
Thanks very much, Cormac.
Thank you.
I agree with Deputy Collins. I'm just sorry if you don't mind. Just for everybody's attention, there are clocks around the room, and it's 10 minutes per Tacht Dáil or Shanador, and that includes time for answers. So thank you. That was right on the button. Thanks, Senator. But just to keep an eye on that there's clocks around, and it's counting down from 10.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to, first of all, this is my first chance. I'm not a member of the committee, but it's my first chance to be at a meeting, so I wish you well. It's an important committee. It has, gives a voice to the fishermen of this country, and that has been lacking in this country. And there's a ministry here too, which is great. And I'd like to thank Deputy McLaughlin for letting me jump ahead of him, because I will get a chance to raise questions. I mightn't get a chance to stay here because we have a meeting, and I should be at it as we speak. But I'll put a number of questions. You might take down the number of questions, and in the time limit we have, you might be able to answer them. There's an immediate need, and you can see that, and I've spoken on this several times in the Dáil, there's an immediate need for financial subsidies for inshore fishermen. Similar, and you've made a very valid point, there's nobody arguing that the artists are entitled to funding here, but you said there's 2,000 artists receiving roughly 35 million, and he receives zero subsidy out there as such. And also then access to social welfare must be improved with Fish Assist. You might give us you might explain that to us later on. The French and the British vessels continue to fish for bass on our doorstep, and unfortunately the Irish don't seem to be able to do that. And can you answer why the Irish inshore fishermen can't when the French and, as I said, and British can? Let me see here now. Inshore vessels, we'll say you're speaking about they should be always left to land their catch in the closest port, obviously for safety reasons and for whatever other reasons. Why isn't that happening? And also a dedicated hook and line quota for bluefin tuna. I mean, saying that for the pelagic fishermen and yourselves as well. Why, throughout the world, it seems to be a quota that every other country seems to have, and Ireland don't seem to be able to get their hands on any of the bluefin lucrative quota. And these are, ways of survival for the fishermen out there, is to look at quotas that other countries have and why we don't have it. What do you look? We have a standalone minister. Are we making progress? Like, I know, look, you'll say it is 12 months, but 12 months is 12 months. Are you making progress as an inshore fishing group into, we'll say, I suppose, getting your point across about subsidies, about new quotas? What do you think? Is that happening under this minister, or are we the same position as you were 12 months ago? We say the situation surrounding the Northwest Herring Committee needs immediate resolvement, as this group is now devoid of any inshore representation. Why aren't he represented in that group, and is the minister helping there in any way? You say about grant applications like, okay, you want to build a shed or you want to do something that's beneficial to a fisherman's job, but unfortunately you have to pay up front 100% before you draw down the grant. How do you envisage a way forward there? To change that, it's no point if the fisherman doesn't have the funding and is in a financial state that the banks won't back them. How are they going to get the money to build a shed and then reclaim the money, or build a structure and reclaim the money after? Can that be changed, or is there any talks that will be changed? In relation to the brown crab working group, you're saying here that it needs to be resumed this year. Regular meetings have to take place. Why haven't they taken place? As such, and seals, the numbers are at record levels, and we've been told this on numerous occasions, and as everyone knows, their only diet is fish. So what do you see as the solution there? And that's my questions as such. I know a lot of questions and you've only got 6 minutes to answer them, but look, do the best you can, and I appreciate it. I'm delighted you're here too. In fairness, I should have said that at the beginning. Thanks very much for coming here.
Thanks very much, Deputy. Well, we won't have time to go through them all. I didn't get to read out the whole of the opening address there, but on the seals issue, seal numbers are at record levels around our coastline. Like, it's tens of thousands of them now. And everyone knows their only diet is fish. So tens of thousands of seals are going to eat millions of fish. And in the wild, if an animal doesn't have a predator, what happens is its prey become extinct. And that is what's going to happen. And like, unless their numbers are reduced rapidly, no amount of MPAs are going to halt the reduction of fish stocks, because seals do not have a predator. And Norway, Greenland, Iceland have fish in abundance in their inshore waters because of seal culls. And both Finland, Estonia and Sweden have written to the EU Commissioner to be allowed now to do the same as what we're asking, just to reduce their numbers. When we were allowed salmon fish, we kept the seal numbers under control. And that's why there were salmon there. And now, like, after we were stopped fishing salmon, the population hasn't increased. And why not? Because if you have 100 seals at the mouth of a river, how can salmon go up and down to spawn? Like that? It can't be done. That's on the seals. John might do the brown crab. I leave Michael talk about the inshore vessels and the closest port. Grant applications. We get all our grants through BIM. When BIM were first formed, they actually gave loans for fishing boats to fishermen. We would not have a fishing industry only for BIM the way it was structured in the beginning. But now BIM's portfolio has expanded to include the tourism industry as well. And you cannot access a grant unless you pay 100% up front. So if I wanted to build a shed or improve my boat or do anything, I have to pay the 100%, and then you get the percentage back after from BIM. But if you don't have the money in the first place, you can't go ahead. So the people that have will get more, and the people that don't can't access it. Whereas it was done the other way around, where BIM paid the supplier X amount, and then we paid the rest. You know, it's very simple solutions like that. Social welfare, you know the story there. It's when you're self-employed, you can't access it really. And financial subsidies, financial supports, we need them, we're looking for them. Our income, there isn't a fisherman in Ireland who isn't down 10,000 a year since COVID, Brexit, war in Ukraine, and that's just the crew members. Like the prices, shellfish, the actual market has collapsed 4 times in the last 5 years. You know, like we can't keep going with the expenses mounting. And I leave Michael answer about the safest port there, because that's where pelagic stocks.
There's a legislation there to say that a vessel must go to a designated port where there's a weighbridge to land fish. If you're fishing on the south coast of Ireland, off Cork Harbour or whatever, you've got to steam to Baltimore or Dunmore East. Go out to sea and steam to Baltimore or Dunmore East to land your catch. It's just not safe for small inshore boats. Like, that's a journey you could be talking, if you have fish aboard, you could be talking a 10-hour steam to either one or the other. And you're going out into the open sea, risking your boat, your own life and the lives of your crews. I think there needs to be something done. There is a 10-ton amount that you can land, but that needs to be brought up higher, maybe to 25 ton, just to cover, because your lorry that comes for your fish will take 25 ton. If you send a lorry away with 10 ton of fish in it, you're not going to have nothing for your fish, because your transport is gone. It's taken out of the 10 ton that you landed. So even if they brought it up for the inshore fleet, that they could land 25 ton in any port around the coast, it would be a massive help for the inshore boats.
John, do you want to do the bluefin tuna quota question and the brown crab?
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to what Michael was saying there, you have a situation in Greencastle where you have a fisheries SFPA office. 10 boats can land 10 tonnes, but one boat can't land 11 tonnes. So 10 boats could land 100 tonne, but one boat can't land 11, and that's down to the Minister can fix that in the morning if he wants. Legislation, no problem, fixed, done and dusted. Just on the tuna, Deputy O'Leary stepped out. It's just unfortunate. It's probably the one quota where we need to go to Europe to get an allocation. ICAT issues Europe with a quota allocation. It's up to our Minister, and we've asked on numerous occasions to ask for it. We get told, well, nobody's going to give it to us. But if you don't ask, you don't get, and you get the same old story. Well, for us to get us to get more, other people will have to take less. It's a case of, for us to get any, those that have it all are going to have to take a small haircut. I was out fishing in Donegal Bay yesterday, fishing crab, 5 angling boats fishing tuna around me, tuna everywhere. 1 or 2 tuna a week would save me having to go to brown crab, takes the pressure off the brown crab, gives us diversification. The stocks are there. The reason we can't fish tuna in our waters at the minute is, again, because our government seen at the time under pressure from angling vessels to protect tuna in Irish waters. That's why even the anglers are limited to the amount of angling boats that can actually fish for them in Irish waters, because they're a protected species. And just on the Northwest Herring again, it's down to the will, not political will, but will on the department to engage. Everybody said the issue with one of the main issues with the Northwest Herring Committee was lack of engagement from the department. I've given them options. We wrote to them last March 2024, or we had a meeting with them in March 2024. We were asked to get back to them in the week. We went back within the week with a letter with our recommendations, and we heard nothing until they came out with recommendations for the fishery in October. Like, no engagement whatsoever.
Gurmina Margaret Hachta. Tachta McLaughlin Dáil.
Gurmagat Cahirla. So, is it a fair assessment to say that the inshore sector, inshore fisheries all around our coast are heavily reliant on fishing for shellfish, which are non-quota species, but there would be concerns about the long-term viability of all of that anyway. So you're heavily reliant, and you just don't have access in any real way to other fisheries. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, that is the situation. And can you also confirm, in terms of our quota that's allocated, which are quota species, that's a public quota that belongs to the Irish people?
Yeah.
That is the case?
National asset.
National asset, okay. It's important that that's understood. So, in terms of Article 17 of the Common Fisheries Policy, you would have met with the Commissioner Kostas Kadis, the EU Commissioner for Fisheries there earlier this year. What did he have to say about Article 17, which is around a fair and accountable allocation of quota? What did he have to say about that?
Well, we explained to him that, Article 17, it exists in theory, and it's there for a reason, to help inshore vessels. And it looks like each coastal, well, not each coastal state, but Ireland definitely ignore it. Like, they just ignore it. I mean, it's supposed to ensure the fair share of quota stocks with inshore vessels, and as you know, we have 400 tonne of mackerel out of 40,000 tonne. When the quota was 70,000 tonne, the entire inshore fleet, which is now close to 95% of the fleet, still only get 400 tonne. So when we put it to him, he said, yes, we agree something has to be done about it. But like what, the Common Fishery Policy reviews, it's the same as the Parliament. Like a lame tortoise will get things done faster. It's just crazy, like that. It's just going on and going on. That this article is there, it exists. Micheál Martin was able to bring in penalty points in this Dáil overnight, and he said that if he didn't do it, that the EU would penalise him. But yet, this government and every previous government refused to share quotas fairly. But there's no backlash from Europe about it. They do nothing whatsoever about it. It just goes on, and nothing is ever done. So there's no backlash from Europe about it. They do nothing whatsoever about it. It just goes on, and nothing is ever done. So, like we are where we are with it.
It just strikes me as, when you look at from across the fishing industry, people who are at sea, there's concern around how the SFPA implement Common Fisheries Policy law, but yet you have Article 17, which doesn't seem to have any effect in Ireland. And the next question I have is, In terms of the northwest herring and the mackerel and the quota management, all the different apparatus that are there where fishermen are supposed to go in and engage, you've outlined your concerns about that for a long time. What's the new Minister, Timmy Dooley, telling you? Does he intend to bring in an independent chair? Does he intend to try to make this system work? What's your sense of it? Is there a role for this committee in seeking clarification about how all that works?
We hopefully know more by this evening. We're meeting Minister Dooley at 3 o'clock today to discuss that and other things. But just on your point about Irish quota being a national asset, it belongs to the country, but it's ministerial policy that privatises it for the chosen few. And if the policies change, then we can get access back to the fisheries that we had access to before. Like it belongs to the people, but it is basically being privatised in this country.
So can I ask then that you would keep us updated on the meeting with the Minister, and if those concerns aren't addressed, that you would correspond with this committee to play an active role in trying to assist that process. So the other point you were asked earlier on, my understanding of your position is you support the Irish fishing industry been giving a fair allocation of fish under the Common Fisheries Policy, but you're asking that the fairness extend inshore. So you're asking for more fish for the Irish quota, but you're asking for a fair share of those quota. Is that a fair assessment of your position?
Exactly, it's like that's your nail in the head. Okay.
So we have the other POs going out to Europe and banging the table about fair and equal access, but if you're going to have if you want fair and equal access at European level, you have to have it at national level as well. You can't, as we mentioned before, you can't have double standards. We have a situation even at national level now on the inshore sector where we have larger vessels exceeding national quotas by between 200% and 500% in some fisheries. Yet when it comes to inshore fisheries, we have clauses put in place in the hook and line mackerel and with the northwest herring, where when the vessels start to get close to the quota, the fishery is closed to prevent it going over the quota. And on the other side then you have last year the 6A North herring was exceeded by over 200%. So now, due to paybacks or penalty clauses imposed by Europe, we have minus 153 tonnes of quota this year. We'll probably not have a quota in the fishery next year as well, because there'll be more to be paid back.
Okay. The next area I want to look at is financial supports. So in a number of points in your presentation, you talk about point 1 in the presentation. You rightly compare other areas of Irish economy and society and the financial subsidies that are available there. The one I always think of is farmers, and rightly so. They get single farm payments, assistance from under the Common Agricultural Policy, rightly so. But I can never understand why something similar is in place for fishermen. You also, in point 7, you talk about access to social welfare, and the Fish Assist scheme is less than minuscule in comparison to what is needed. I put in a parliamentary question not that long ago, and the number of fishermen and fishing families across the state who get assistance is 50. Around, I think it's 51. 51. Absolutely tiny, which means the scheme isn't working. So that absolutely backs up your point. So that's 1 and 7, and then 8 was around grant applications and making them more paper copies, dealing with the bureaucracy, and also needs to be more. Can you just talk about all of that? I mean, ideally, from the position of your association, I mean, what type of financial supports would work? I mean, whenever I talk to inshore fishermen, they always say we want fish first. So that's absolutely sound. But across the board, the species are being tightened and tightened. I'm fervently of the belief that financial support is absolutely necessary across the inshore sector to keep you in the water. I think the Irish people would want that. So what's the ballpark? Where do you need to be in terms of financial support, social welfare supports, and then grant assistance?
Well, I suppose we've already addressed the grant assistance. What needs to be, like, that is a very, very simple fix. You know, rather than us coming up with the 100% and then getting the percentage back if the state pays the percentage first. you know, the same as when BIM were originally set up, that they gave the loan for it. We're not asking for loan. It would be great if they did. And the financial supports, like, the farmers get it and they're entitled to it, but like the price of beef and milk are higher now than it ever was, and they can still get supports. And we were told that because of the common fishery policy, the fishermen, it wasn't written into the common fishery policy, so we couldn't get anything off the state, and it was written into the common agricultural policy at a European level. But then there's nothing written into a common artist policy, but yet the state can find the money for that because of their importance to the culture and heritage of Ireland. Like, are we not as important to the culture and heritage of Ireland? Like, but the real killer for us was there was 242 million euros available through bar funding, and 95% of the fleet, the inshore sector, got nothing. You will be told by the state, oh, they got it this way and they got it that way, there was 40 million given to them. And then when you look into it, you'll say, oh, but that went to the peers. Like, that wasn't, like, the bigger lads got it into their hand. Like, the money we received from Minister McConaughey at the time did not come out of bar funding. And the tourism industry and everyone got it, and Minister Costas, you know, is of the firm belief that, oh, Jesus, there was tens of millions given to the inshore sector out of bar funding. It's complete lies. Like, it didn't happen. Ours came out of, what was it?
De minimis aid.
De minimis aid, like. You know, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I think some of that money was actually handed back after. And we're there then that we couldn't sell crabs, couldn't sell shrimp, couldn't sell whelks because of COVID, Brexit, war in Ukraine, and basically had to tie the boats up. And they were giving back money, whether that allegedly. It's, you know, it's hard to take.
Gurmagov Bert. Next we have Senator Manus Boyle.
First of all, I would like to welcome you here. It's great to see you in here and talking about the Inshore as a vital part of the coastal communities and one that needs to be supported. And there was a lot of the questions I wanted to asked already, but one I'll just go down through them. The financial support, I totally agree with that. I mean, I've boys work for me, this part-time fishermen. Their days they can't go out, their weeks they can't go out. They're self-employed. That's totally wrong. I mean, no fault to other groups. They're getting financial aid. The inshore fishermen should be getting financial aid too. And I think that's something this committee should push the minister on and push hard. I mean, I know one man that sat at home for 3 weeks last year waiting to go out to lift his pots. That's wrong. And I would like that the committee would take it on as one of the points that we would support the inshore fishermen to try and get some kind of financial aid. You know, another one, Michael came on there too, and I think this is all, it's 100%, it's criminal what made fishermen do when they can't land at the port that's safest to them. I know of a couple of instances that boats had to leave Inver port and Inver and go round to Killybegs to land fish when it was totally unsafe. But if they didn't do it, they were going to be brought in front of the courts. I mean, to me, it makes no sense at all. I mean, at the end of the day, the captain of the boat that holds the licence should make the decision. Is it safe to go to another port, or is it safe to come onto land? And I think you're 100% right, Michael. It needs to be like, if you have 10 tonne, you can land at a non-designated. But a fisherman doesn't know what's in the net. I mean, he's not going to, like, to me, the policy, it's total nonsense. I mean, at the end of the day, the captain of the boat should have the sense to make the best decision for his crew and to land the fish at the nearest port if it's safe to do so. Now, if the weather's good and he wants to go round to the weighbridge, let him go on ahead. But I think he should be given that option. I really do, because somebody's going to be lost at sea over the head of this rule here. And I have been talking about this rule before. It's totally nonsensical what's going on. So I think that's another one the committee could push hard with the minister on, as if it's safe, yes, and if it's not, they land where it's safe for them to do so. On the pelagic too, how do you think could it be shared out better? Like, the pot is so small at the moment, and everybody, in my eyes, everybody desires a bit. But the problem is, with coming from Europe, we're getting the crumbs of the table. Everybody else is getting fishing out in our waters, and we're getting very, very little. I mean, how can we try and make it fair for the Inshore as well as the big boys, say the pelagic? Everybody has to be looked after. Then this herring committee, I mean, I was at a meeting in Donegal along with you, John, and there was a whole row there about herring. That was last December, I think. We had that was on, wasn't it? About.
It was just before we were up here the last time.
You know, but just on a wonder, was that ever sorted, or was it just kicked down the road like everything else?
The department never engaged.
No.
We've been asked to engage several times and just point blank won't, and it's like you're telling everybody to go into the room to sort it out. And as you say, the big guys have it all, and we have nothing, and they're expecting us to come along and get together. It's up to the Minister and his officials to be the referee and put it right. And just on the pelagics here, all we wanted is it to go back to the way it was before.
Right.
Before the policy changed in 2012 and 2017. It's not that we're asking, like, it was taken off the inshore sector. We're not looking for something that was never available to us. We only want what was available to us before, and we've always stated the case that at the end of the year, if it's not caught, it goes back into the pot and it's shared out again next year. Yeah. It's not that fish is going to go to waste or anything like that.
Yeah. And
like when you're talking about 2 or 3 or 4% of the mackerel quota, in 2023 there was 140,000 tonnes of pelagic species available to Ireland, and the inshore sector had approximately access to approximately 2,000 tonnes out of 140,000 tonnes. So we're not talking massive numbers.
No, well, and there's another one too, like the bluefin tuna. I totally agree. I mean, from what I'm being told by the fishermen off the coast, there's plenty of tuna out there. Why Ireland hasn't a licence for tuna, for the like of the small inshore man that was allowed maybe 3-4 fish a week or whenever they're there, that would keep his cost down, and it would save other species too. You know, the fish is out there. Every other country's getting them. I mean, there are boats coming from Japan to fish tuna off in international waters. I mean, why can we not get a small quota for the like of the inshore fishermen to fish that would keep their costs down and save other stocks?
You imagine now we have the situation where Iceland is looking to get access to European waters to fish Irish waters to fish bluefin or to fish blue whiting. Yeah. And they're talking about trading mackerel, self-appointed mackerel quotas on the basis that the mackerel were in their waters. And I think we have a very strong case that if Europe gives access to the Icelanders in exchange for quota that they awarded themselves solely on the basis that there's mackerel in our waters, their waters, then surely we can make the same case that the bluefin tunas in our waters now 12 months of the year, that Ireland should be allowed access to quota for fish that's in our waters. We talked about double standards before. If that's not put right, then we're going to have double standards there as well.
But I do think, talking to the Commissioner, that he sees other opportunities too for the inshore fishermen in Ireland because of the migratory pattern has all changed. You know, and I think that's one that we could really push hard on this committee, is that the inshore could try and get something out of the bluefin tuna. I mean, they're off our coast. You said, like, I heard this story last night too, that a boat was out on Sunday and all they seen out round Donegal Bay was tuna.
They've been in as far as Killybegs Harbour.
Yeah. And
in the harbour itself, I guess.
You know, and nobody's catching them, or they're just letting them away, catch and release, so they can't take them in.
We need to ensure that there's a hook and line quota given, because if we're just given a bluefin tuna quota and it's all caught in 2 days by a couple of large boats, then the quota's gone. Yeah. Like this man actually fished hook and line tuna in the Bay of Biscay in a 12-metre boat before, so it can be done. Like it's.
It's a lovely fish, hook and line. You're playing with the fish.
Yeah.
Environmentally, it's 100% no bycatch, nothing. No. And it's there outside our doorstep now. I went to the Bay of Biscay when I was young to fish tuna in a 12-metre boat because I wanted to do it. And probably shouldn't have. I shouldn't have been. I know I shouldn't have been there, but I did it because I wanted to fish tuna. Yeah. And now it's outside my own doorstep, and I can't fish it. No. Like, just not making sense that the fish are there. They're inside in the harbours, in Cork Harbour, Waterford Harbour, all the harbours along the south coast and the west coast. They're coming into the harbours. Yeah. And we're looking out over the back of the wall arm, and we're going to be looking at the Spanish and the French catching next, looking out over the back of the wall, and we're not allowed to catch them. Like, it needs to change.
I presume this, like the things we're bringing up, just a question for the committee. Can you do something about this? Like, because the last time we were here, 18 months later, we're back again and nothing's changed. All the points we've made here today, we made 18 months ago. And the last committee we were in front of did absolutely nothing for us. Like, can this committee, now that it's just fisheries, like, can you ensure financial support for us? Can you talk to Pascal and Jack now in the budget coming up and saying, lads, these fellas need something, like, because they're falling. Like, when the pollock fishery was lost to us, our members just stopped fishing, like, because some were dependent on it, but a minority then were totally dependent on it. Those lads are gone now when the pollock was taken off. It's like, so can you, do an undertaking that you will speak to the finance fellas for us and actually give us results?
So I'm conscious I'm eating into some Senator Boyle's time here, but to respond directly, so the committee is not the minister and the committee is not the government. Our job is to hold government to account, to point towards policy improvements and innovations, to highlight issues, to hold state agencies to account. That's our function and our role in all this. Okay. That said, we have people here who are clearly very passionate about the Irish fishing industry. It's very important that in our first kind of half year's work that we're getting to grips with the issues affecting the inshore sector, and certainly the discussions that we have here today and other discussions that we've been having and will be having in the next coming months will feed into a report that the committee, for example, is doing. Padraig McLaughlin, Deputy McLaughlin, is rapporteur for this committee on the Committee on Sea Fisheries Protection Issues. There will doubtless be other reports that this committee will do in the future looking at various aspects, and of course we can write to ministers, including Minister Dooley, who you're meeting later today, but also the Minister for Finance and Public Expenditure and Reform, as and when necessary, to make suggestions to demand certain changes. Whether they make those changes is beyond our ability, but I am conscious that I've taken into your time, so I'll just give you a minute to wrap up if that's okay, and then we'll get to the next speaker.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for clarifying that. But I think there's one thing here too, and I'm getting it from... There's no meaningful engagement with the department. So I think this committee should write to the department and ask that that they interact far more often with Inshore. I mean, at the end of the day, we have a department there. That's what they're there for. They have to talk to the people that's out on the sea that's doing the job, and they're not doing it at the moment. So I think the department needs to step up here too, Chair. Thanks very much, boys.
So just before we move on to Deputy Whitmore, our next... Deputy Whitmore, our next speaker, there is a proposal there from Senator Boyle. So is that agreed that we would write to the department and seek ongoing engagement, notwithstanding the fact you're meeting the minister today, but that there would be more engagement, and then at our next private meeting we can discuss that correspondence then. But is that agreed? Meaningful engagement. Meaningful engagement, very important. Right, yeah. No. Senator has his hand up on Teams. Okay. So, Deputy Whip.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for coming in today. I'm just trying to get my head around, because there's a lot of information in that opening statement, and indeed in the discussions that have followed on. So, in relation to the pelagic, so in relation to the mackerel and herring, that is something that's within the remit of the government that they can do. It's not a competency of the EU. They don't need to go back to the EU to redistribute those quotas, essentially. Can you tell me, when was the decision made, because you did have access to more larger quotas of mackerel and herring, when was the decision made to switch, and why was that decision made, do you know?
In 2012, Minister Coveney brought in a policy which basically track recorded the herring fishery the Northwest Heron and the Celtic Sea Heron. I think there was 35 or 37 boats, I think, actually got, as we called it, the golden ticket. The rest of the boats got. There's a small inshore fishery in Dunmore East. It's called the Dunmore Box. I know it's covers the Waterford coast and the Wexford coast. Larger pelagic vessels wasn't allowed fish in that box, and he allocated 11% in the Dunmore box for the smaller boats, while he gave 85% to the 30-odd larger boats. I think it was even less allocated in the Northwest, John, is that correct? 5% in the Northwest heron fishery. Okay. Prior to his arrangement and the rebuilding of the stocks, it was on a 33-66 over and under 55. You know, it was 2/3 to 1/3. So basically we went from having 33% under 55-foot boats having 33% of the quota. With Minister Coveney's policy, we were reduced to 11% in the Celtic Sea herring and 5% in the Northwest herring. Okay. We're not looking for anything here. All we want is to have what was taken off us. Yeah. We don't. This can all be sorted nationally, like.
And Mike, can you tell me why was that decision made? What was said at the time?
I spoke to Mr. Coveney at the time. Well, I actually through letters and emails, and he said to me that the reason for it was to preserve the stocks. Now, the Celtic Sea heron has since collapsed. So I think Minister Coveney's policy needs to be readdressed, because it didn't do. I have letters at home where he stated to me the reason for he was giving it to this amount of people was to protect the stock.
But he didn't reduce the overall quota, he just redistributed it.
He redistributed the quota,
yeah.
And it was to protect the stocks. But the fishery has collapsed. Okay. So his policy didn't work.
And if with the stocks after collapsing, is there potential, because obviously if the fish aren't there, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to make a living out of it. Is there potential, even if that was redistributed or you had more access to it, is it viable for you? Well,
at the moment, the Marine Institute are doing DNA sampling on the Celtic Sea herring, and they now believe that 50% of the Celtic Sea herring has gone north into the North Irish Sea. Its actual climate change or water temperatures have risen, and they believe now that the fish have gone into the Irish Sea. But we don't have very little Irish Sea herring quota because we lost it in the Brexit deal. Okay. And we'll have to get access for that herring fishery. If it is the Celtic Sea fish has gone into the Irish Sea, and we're not allowed, we don't have Irish Sea quota for it, we're done.
Okay, so and is there potential then, because you were talking about, the Icelandic fishery, saying that, they were in Icelandic waters, so therefore they can, would that be something similar then with the stocks going up from the Celtic Sea? Is that a similar opportunity? If the Celtic Sea stocks have gone northwards up into the Irish Sea, is there an argument to be made that they are actually Celtic Sea stocks?
That's why they've done the DNA testing on them, to try to prove that. At the moment, it's ongoing, like.
Okay.
We're taking samples as often as we can for them.
And I suppose because, look, I think we are sort of seeing a lot of changes in the different stocks and their distribution and the ranges, and it's hard to predict how stocks will eventually, what movements they're going to be. In relation to, but on the flip side, then we're also seeing things like bluefin tuna coming into our waters, which we wouldn't have ever had before. Do you think that the department sort of moves fast enough when there new opportunities come up potentially? to actually maximise it for ye? Because I think your point was well made there in relation that if there was a quota, it would have to be hook and line, because otherwise the quota would just be eaten up by the bigger players, and you wouldn't get any of it.
Well, the Celtic Sea Heron fishery, we're on a scientific quota for the last 7 or 8 years, which is minimal. We're basically all we're getting enough to take samples for the Marine Institute, and we tried as little as we have. The Inshore have 105 tonne this year, and I was at a meeting last week, Celtic Sea Heron meeting, to decide how are we going to share out this 105 tonne. Like, it's minimal. That's going on, you could say, since 2017 or 18. But there's nothing, because the heron are gone, there's nothing there. There's nothing coming up behind it to take the slack. Like, we're left with a hole in our income. Like, I don't know what the real answer is. We have to prove that these herons are gone to the Irish Sea, but obviously the English will not want to hear that, or the Scots, because as far as they're concerned, it's their fishery now, as we traded it, and it was a trade deal in Brexit. They traded Irish Sea herring.
Can I just ask as well, because I do think your sector is getting squeezed significantly. I think there is, and I mean, Michael, we would have had discussions in relation to the sprat, and I know I'm on a different side of that with you, but I think we do need to have sustainable management of fisheries, and I think that because there has been a lack of management in many different fisheries over the years, I do think you're being overly impacted by that, and you're sort of being squeezed by changes, climate change, water change, overfishing, and also then the bigger players obviously have a bigger voice when it comes to a lot of this. So I think you're probably at the coalface and getting impacted by it a lot more. But for your organisation, is there around, would I be correct in saying there's around maybe 1,300 people in the Inshore? So, and you represent around 200?
We have 246 members at the moment, but we represent about 300 boats.
Okay, and would they be all from one, or they're from all around the country? Yeah.
Every coast of the county, we have,
And because I do understand as well that, like, you are all individual businesses as well, and sometimes it can be difficult to bring together groups who see themselves just on an individual basis and stuff. So, but would you, and we've obviously agreed to write to the Minister to have more consultation. I mean, you've obviously found that your voices haven't been heard and listened to when it comes to your sector over the last number of years. Is that correct?
We've only become a PO with the last 3 years. Like,
okay, so you're new, relatively new.
There was no voice before that, and we're finding it increasingly. We're voluntary, I went to be town fishing today, not up here, same as these lads. We have other things to be doing, but the other POs got help with funding and that starting, and there doesn't seem to be, again, just the interpretation of EU law. Like, in Spain, they gave 8.4 million to their POs to be used accordingly as they wanted it up front. We get nothing. We're 3 years now as a PO, and we have a secretary at home doing up what we've spent in the last 3 years to get a percentage back 3 years later. Like, we're doing everything out of our own pockets. Whereas, and then when we get the percentage back, we're expected to stay going. And we were on to Deputy Dooley about this, and he's writing for, but they're saying that it has nothing to do with the EU, that it's the Department of Finance in Ireland that are stopping us from getting funding up front.
But the other POs get funding.
Well, they got it to help them to start off in the beginning, But they're going with so long, they're there with decades. So once you get set up and you're putting in your receipts all the time, you're getting your percentage back. But they have big membership fees. It's a percentage of their boats' gross things. It's €100 a year for us. We can't afford to. Our members we're cash strapped, cash strapped.
Okay, I think that might be something as well, Chair, that we could push, because I do think it's important that you have a strong representational body, you know, that can have those discussions with the department.
But like on the sprat issue there, that we're on different parts.
Sorry, Mr. Desmond, if you don't mind, I'll just hand over to Deputy Gallagher here. We're into his time slot here, if that's okay. And we can get back to that issue.
Thank you, Cahill, and like my colleagues, to welcome the Inshore people to our meeting this evening. And it's a long, long time since I met the Inshore, and a lot of the problems are still the same. And when I look at this, and I think I'm looking at your presentation, Irish Sea Bass, what needs to be done there? Because as at the moment, it's just for angling purposes. And it was the same with salmon years ago, that I was totally opposed to the termination of the drift netting for salmon. And we were told at that time by those in Iceland and those in this country as well, that if we banned those, there would be plenty of salmon for the anglers. But it'd be interesting to have your view on what the stocks are like of salmon, and perhaps maybe after many years' time that the state should be looking at the stocks of salmon and maybe consider reopening them, because there's no point in blaming Europe all the time. Europe have no control over that. We have that control within our own country. I couldn't help but take a note here that you're almost an extinct species and landfish. And when we look at all of the others, whether it's those who are now receiving 35 million, the artists, because they're but you're part of the culture and heritage as well. And if we don't put stop to it now and try and assist you, then we won't be meeting you in a number of years' time, because you'll be totally extinct. I also just want to say that we can be very supportive here, but we don't want to give the impression that we have the answers to it all. We can make a case on your behalf to the Minister, and you'll be making your own case, but you have a very good presentation, and this is a good document for us to use. I was very familiar in the old days with Bag-in-Bun and Dunmore and right around the coast or over to the south. But I was just taken aback, because I'm more familiar, obviously, for a number of years, having been down there with the designated ports. But to think that the designated ports are only Baltimore and Dunmore East. Of course, you can go into any port if it's a force majeure, but you can't claim a force majeure every single time. And of course, the 10 tonnes, ideal. But who was the individual that decided, I know you don't have the answer, that decided unilaterally that this is 10 tonnes? Why wouldn't it be 12? Why wouldn't it be 20? It's the same principle. And even if you wanted to land in other ports, and I think there should be more designated ports, and there's plenty of SFPA officials, if they get an hour or 2 hours and you can hail, they can be there to do it. I mean, when I look at the northwest coast, what John is more familiar with, from right around the coast into Killybegs, and crab vessels have to go around there. An accident is going to happen, and then it'll be too late. The bluefin tuna, I'm not so sure what you mean that you must have more meetings in relation to this. Now tell me, Sprat hasn't been mentioned, and I know next year or sometime afterwards there's going to be restrictions on the baselines there. And I think that was announced by not by Timmy Dooley, but by the Minister for Agriculture some time ago. And is there a sprat fishery? Because there was a big sprat fishery coming into Cove and Dunmore East years ago, but you haven't mentioned it. And are you involved in that? The other one, and I fully appreciate, and you remind me of the days of Brendan O'Kelly, and that's going back a long time, who was chairman and chief executive of BAM, when at that time no one could afford to build the 56-footers or the 50-footers. BAM built the boats that time, down with Joe Boyle and Dingle, and up in Killybegs and maybe elsewhere. And it gave an opportunity. You got your foot on the lather, but now you have to go to the banks, and by God, it's hard to get money from banks. They won't give it to you. So I think there'll have to be something, and hopefully between the Minister and BAM and the Department of Finance, there could be some scheme in place that you wouldn't have to complete the job. And then when the job is completed, it takes some time before they can sign off and you get your money. So that's something I think we should be looking at. The brown crab working group, to be resumed. I'm not so sure what that means, but there should be regular meetings. And also, I would support regular meetings between you people and the department. That should happen. It shouldn't be once a year. It should be a couple of times a year at least, so you can highlight the issues. I know seals is not popular to talk about culling seals, but by God, seals' food is fish, and I think something has to be looked at there, because seals are consuming a lot more fish than you people are landing. So I do believe that the mackerel and the blue whiting, they're much part of your fishery, and you require that. And I'm sure the Minister will look at the possibility of ring fencing a percentage for you people. So with those few words, I'm glad you're here. We'll be glad to meet you any time, and particularly can meet our Donegal friend, to assist in every way possible. But I think you're meeting today with the importance of it. And I would have to say, he might be a member of my own party, I do believe that Timmy Dooley is a good listener, he's fair, and will give you a good hearing. But a good hearing's not good enough. There has to be a follow-through. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy. That's our point. There has to be a follow-through. There's lots to get through there with your questions, but like salmon fishery, that's like if he could make recommendations like that to start reopening fisheries for us instead of closing, as for the sprat fisheries, Deputy Whitmore's way. When we're forced out of the quarter species, then the only thing we've left is the non-quarter species. And then when you start putting forward legislation to stop us fishing the non-quarter species, what are we supposed to do? Like, you know, where are we to go? And the ISIS information on sprat is just a precaution, because they haven't done, I can leave Michael to talk about it there in greater detail, but like, there is plenty sprat in Irish waters. Just because they weren't in Bantry Bay last year doesn't mean they weren't in Donegal Bay or the Dunmore Box or anywhere else. Like, pilchards and anchovies have become the dominant species in the bays of the southwest coast for the last couple of years because of warming waters. And 200 years ago, there was 200 French vessels sailing from Brittany and France to Bantry, fishing those stocks, and there was no sprat there then either. Like, things change. It's not always overfishing. But Michael would get into that in more detail, maybe, about the sprat fishing.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the Dunmore Box, which have they got a picture of the Dunmore Box? No. Right. So the Dunmore Box runs on the 52-degree line from Minehead. It goes east, way east of Carnsore Point, up the east coast, and into Cahore Point, 5230. That's the Dunmore Box. It's a big area. The only one thing Simon Coveney did do that I'd agree with was that box, because it excluded the larger pelagic vessels from fishing for herring and sprat within the box. And since 2012, like, the sprat fishery in Waterford Estuary and in the Dunmore Box has come on in leaps and bounds. I have some things here from the Marine Institute that they'd done surveys while they were doing the Celtic Sea Hearn survey. And you will see on that survey, I can show it to you there later, predominantly the fish are in the Dunmore Box. Now, it's very positive, but which is even more positive, they didn't do the survey in the bays and estuaries where the fish predominantly are at the time that they done the survey. They stated that they didn't do it. If they had to be able, their vessel wasn't big enough, or too big, sorry, rather too big, to go into the bays to do the survey. If they had been in them bays, while the survey looks good, if they had been in them bays when they done that survey, the stocks in the Dunmore Box are very, very good. And I would say the same for the Northwest sprat fishery in Killybegs. There was no survey done on the east coast of Ireland. The survey that was done on the south coast didn't include Bantry Bay. It didn't include any of the bays around the coast. And I'd be honest with you, Ms Whitmore. I was flabbergasted when you, Brian, to put a moratorium on sprat, while there was a very good and lucrative fishery in the southeast of Ireland and on the northwest coast of Ireland. If there's no sprat in Bantry Bay, well, I don't have the answers. But I'll ask you a question. Do you know how much sprat the inshore fleet took out of Bantry Bay in the last 10 years?
Can I just cut in here for two reasons. One, we're over time and Senator Craughwell has been waiting here online and he's going to take his 10 minutes now. We will have a standalone meeting next week to look at the entire issue of sprat. And if you would like to send some questions, we can put them, but we just don't have time. There will be hopefully another round of questions, much less time for TDs and senators, and there might be an opportunity to put it there, but just for now we'll go to Senator Craughwell. Is that okay? And Senator Craughwell, I can see that you were in one of the lovely Leinster House offices, but would you mind just verbally confirming that you were on the grounds before you proceed? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just checked. Can you hear me there?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I'm sitting in my office in LH 2000. I'm sorry I didn't come down, but I'm trying to get some other work done as well. Look, what I've got to say is fairly short and fairly sweet. From the time we joined the European Union, I have seen fishermen thrown under the bus time and time and time again. I've seen harbours around the country that once had several trawlers in them slowly but surely disappear, and I think my colleague Pat the Cope Gallagher is 100% correct. In a very short space of time, we will not have a fishing industry, and certainly at the scale we're talking about today. One of the things that concerns me today, before I speak on it, I just want to say we have to be honest, and you have been very honest, Chair, with the witnesses that have come here today. We cannot change government policy. We cannot guarantee money. We cannot guarantee anything. And indeed, Deputy McLaughlin referred to a fisherman sitting at home for 3 weeks due to bad weather and no income, and what that does to a family, etc., etc. So there's lots of things that need to be looked at, but I think this committee should immediately investigate the privatisation that has been referred to as by the witnesses today. I think we need to find out exactly who is behind the privatisation, what formula is being used to divvy up quotas, etc., etc. To the three witnesses that are there, I really don't have questions. You've been asked question after question after question, and I think there's very little to be said from a question point of view, other than the fact that I would like to know from the three of you, are any of the three of you likely to leave the industry in the very near future, or fishermen within your particular area, are they likely to leave? I'll leave it at that, Chair, and I look forward to an answer from the witnesses there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deputy. I'll leave John talk about the quota. As you want to know, the three of us, are we likely to leave it? Yeah, it's quite possible. It's quite possible. I've applied for a flag grant myself recently for marine tourism, and I got it, and I'm seriously thinking about packing it up because it's just not viable. And it's not that the fish aren't there or that I can't catch it, but like what I used to do before was I used to tie my boat up in the winter time, bring in my pots, and then I go fishing with Michael or his partner at herrings and sprat. But now I find myself fishing pots all year round. And that's because of government policy. We have this pressure on our shellfish stocks because of government policy. No other reason. We were stopped from fishing bass, stopped from fishing salmon, stopped from fishing trout, stopped from fishing eels, stopped from fishing pollock. Like, what are we supposed to go at, like, you know? And then you'll be complaining in a few years' time, oh, there was a fellow made a statement the other day that Inshore doesn't know, part of the Save Our Sprat group actually, that Inshore doesn't know what sustainability is. It's not our fault that we're put into one pressure zone, like, of stocks. It's not by choice. It was the government forced us to do that, and it's the government can, like, there is no strategy for Inshore. BIM or Minister Creed in 2019 came up with the Inshore strategy. It was launched in 2019. It was to run until 2024. Huge launch and fanfare and pictures in the paper. We never had one meeting about it since. We're now in 2025. There's still no strategy for Inshore. Like, it's very easy to say the moratorium on bass can be lifted in 2025, or the moratorium on salmon can be lifted. That takes so many pressure off shrimp and crab stocks, and little by little get the fleet to diversify into different stocks again, because we were sustainable fishermen when it was left to our own devices. I fished scallop for a couple of months of the year, I fished herrings for a couple of months of the year, I fished salmon, I fished shrimp, and everything worked fine. And then the government started getting involved and destroyed the whole lot. And it's very, very easy for the Irish government to fix that again by reopening the fisheries and diversifying and giving us a fair share of the quota like we used to have. So unless things change, to answer your question, yes, I can see myself packing up shortly if things don't change. John would probably be better equipped to answer the privatisation question.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just answer the first thing. Are you likely to leave? Nobody, I don't think, wants to leave the fishing industry. As part of who we are, as part of what we are. We may be forced to leave, as we talked about Pollock already. When the Pollock was closed, some of our members were actually forced to sell their boats. They were forced out, no compensation, no supports. On the question of who is behind the privatisation, ministerial policy has basically privatised pelagic quotas. When we had access to 13% of the mackerel quota through the polyvalent allocation, when the policy review was reviewed in, I think, 2017 by Minister Coveney, those that benefited most were those in the southwest of the country, so in his own area. So we asked the question in Europe, we asked European or EU MEPs, did they think that our inability to make political donations affects our ability to access quota? How the policy is privatised the quota for a chosen few would lead you to believe yes, because why would a quota that was accessible to so many get taken away from that many and handed into the hands of a few? I don't know. In your game, it's all about votes. Well, it doesn't seem the inshore sector's the largest sector of the fishing industry by a country mile, yet we get treated the worst. So I don't know. We can't say whether directly that was the reason for the privatisation of it. But when I say privatisation, those vessels get their allocations every year, at the start of every year. The inshore sector doesn't get access to those quotas, but if you had the money, you can buy into those fisheries. If you can afford the money for the boat and the licence, then you can buy into it. So in my mind, if you can buy into something, then it has been privatised.
Michael, do you answer? Are you thinking of leaving?
No, I'm not thinking of leaving. I come from a background of fishing. Back to when records started, 1864, I can trace back my family on my father's side to fishing back to then. And I would say probably another 200 or 300 years before that. But I can on paper prove that my family fished for since 1864. It's a way of life. And I'd like to carry it on. I don't want to be pushed out of something that I love. You know?
I want to thank the three witnesses. That was quite moving to hear from them. I do think there's an allegation made there that the quotas have been moved to the southwest. I do think we need to examine that, Chair, and I would ask that we organise to have the department in fairly quickly to deal with that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a proposal there from Senator Craughwell, and I think as part of our work programme, we had undertaken to have the department in on a regular basis. But I think that is a good one, and I'd be prepared to see it go forward.
Can I just widen that proposal? That we would invite the department in to respond to the issues around quota allocation, you know, in terms of mackerel, herring, the issues of pollock, basically all of the issues that have been raised today. They're easily summarised, but that we would invite them in, and the Minister, or is it the department? I just want to get guidance from the delegation.
The department or just an arm of the
Okay.
Minister?
So
really, like
it is the Minister.
It's his decision. Like.
The Minister's signature, this and all that.
Yeah, so it's the Minister and his senior officials should be invited to respond to the issues raised. Because it's a public quota, it belongs to the people, and Article 17 of the Common Fisheries Policy is the framework around how you deal with that, and he needs to explain how they're adhering to Article 17 and how also they're mediating between the fishery organisations around this matter. Yeah.
Thanks, Deputy McLaughlin. And again, just on that proposal, Deputy Whitmore.
Just on that proposal, thanks, Chair. I also think it would be valuable to actually, because all this needs to be predicated on what fish are available is the other thing, you know, and if, for whatever reason, if the stocks aren't available, like that has to form part of the discussion. And like I'd be keen on seeing the Marine Institute. So like really what I'd like to see is all the different areas that you're looking at, whether it's, you know, mackerel or bluefin, to have the Marine Institute in here to tell us what the science is saying and what the stocks are saying, and then the department to talk about the policy in relation to that. But I do think that there needs to be a plan for the inshore sector that looks at all those different elements to see what growth there could possibly be. And Michael, I'm more than happy to have a chat with you about the sprat fishery, because the reason I'm coming at it the way I'm coming at it is because I noticed you mentioned talking about sustainable management. That is absolutely key to everything that I will be doing in the Fisheries Committee, because if there isn't sustainable management of the fisheries, you won't be there. Like my priority will be to make sure that there is a really strong inshore sector, but that has to be done hand in hand with the science and the fish stocks as well. You know, so, but I'm more than happy to chat to you.
On the science,
would you mind, because I'm just trying to keep a little bit of control on this, because we've at least one more speaker, potentially two, to come in on it. So I just want to keep it to comments on that particular proposal from Senator Crockwell, and then I'll go back to him in a minute. So if it's related to that, I'll allow it, but if it's not.
I just want to know, is it agreed that we would bring in the Minister and his officials to respond to the concerns around the allocation of quota? Is
that agreed? I think that's.
If I might come in there,
just one moment, Senator, Deputy.
I'll propose that the Marine Institute are also brought in, and perhaps BIM as well.
Perhaps as part of that same meeting. Is that agreed?
Well, can I just that they would be consulted around the state of the current availability based on, is that the?
I think that we need, I would prefer to be able to sit in and have a sort of backwards and forwards discussion about the different stocks. I mean, there's different elements to this committee, and the marine environment is a key element, as is the fisheries. And then we also have the wind energy, but I think it's important to have that reflected here as well. So
just to be clear, the species that we're talking about are quota species, and that's based on Marine Institute evidence. Like the actual quota that's allocated is already based on existing Marine Institute evidence. So
there's no bluefin quota, though.
Sorry?
There's no bluefin. So, and the Marine Institute they're undertaking a lot of studies at the moment in relation.
EU quota that gets shared out amongst.
Yeah.
Okay, can we take it as agreed then that we will certainly invite the Minister in?
Chair, can I just come in again?
Discuss that in a moment, Senator, for sure. I just want to get this point out. And then maybe we have a discussion about how that meeting goes at our next private meeting, which will be Tuesday morning. Is that okay? Because we have other speakers who've been waiting here patiently to come in and have their speak. Senator Crockwell, 1 minute, if that's okay. You'd 1 minute on the clock before we got into that.
I just want to agree with Senator McLaughlin, but I would ask that if we're having the department in, and I believe the department should come before the Minister, then we should be provided with empirical evidence of, say, the last 5 years on how quotas have been divided out. We need to have empirical evidence that we can work from, so I would ask that we seek that information. Thank you.
So that's agreed, and we can move on. The next speaker is Deputy Charles Ward.
Okay. I want to thank you for coming in today, and I'm going to be brief. Particularly shocking to see that we're talking about the bluefin tuna in the water has been fished by other nations, but because we have no proper quota, the French and British vessels continue to fish for like sea bass on our very doorsteps. Well, we haven't been able to fish these since the 90s. To me, looking at that, coming from a rural environment surrounded by sea, where we've lost generations of fishermen, where they've chosen other careers, other pathways, and where, Michael, you were talking about moving forward, how it's part of your blood, it's part of your soul. You know, me, myself, coming from an island where fishing was the heart of the community, not anymore. And I see this coming down the line. I see how culturally it's as important.
So sorry.
That's okay. It's as important as the arts. To me, it's as important as the arts, because where this is generational, it's family to family. You can trace back your lineage to 300-400 years. I could to some point in mine where that was part of life. I just think it's discrimination of the highest order, and looking at it, these are being discriminated against. I think that the way moving forward is, yeah, you have to look at it as this is part of our culture, and we cannot allow this to go. I'm just going to hit you with a few questions here and be very brief. Did your organisation feed into the new strategic inshore fishery sector 2024-2029, and do you know why the publication has been delayed?
I don't think such a thing as this.
Could you enlighten us?
There you go. I'm going to get back to you with that one then. First question answered. Okay, we'll move on. Could you give me a background on why North West Herring Committee doesn't have any inshore representatives? Since when has this been the case? And why have the Brown Crab Working Group stopped meeting?
On the North West Herring Committee, it got to a stage where we were having a meeting, and then things were agreed at that meeting. You come back to the next meeting, and things have changed. Okay. And slides will be up on the screen, and you ask, how did that? Oh, we've all agreed to that. So things were changing between meetings. We were agreed at one meeting, changed at the second meeting. You were told, oh, well, that was, we all agree here, or the majority agrees for it. We reached out to the Minister at the time and the Department, expressing our concerns. We weren't being listened to, or we were being basically, I wouldn't say bullied, we're big and bold, we weren't being bullied, but when you're a minority on any group, yeah, you get overtaken in that, and that it was sort of, that's what the committee agrees to, and we couldn't work with that. We had disagreements on the policy. We stepped away from the committee because we felt it was doing us no good. We reached out to the Minister when we did that. We reached out to the Department. They came back to us just before St Patrick's Day 2024. The committee members that remained were there at the meeting. Both NIFA and the National Inshore Fisheries Forum had stepped away from the committee. We were at that meeting, and the department officials, we expressed our concerns. We were asked by the principal officer of the department to come back with them within the week because there was urgency, and that was their words. We wrote back with our few points, not on any of the points that we wrote to, that any of the options we gave. They're already, we asked for an independent chair. There's already an independent chair in the Celtic Sea Herring Management Committee. We asked for a few things like that. We heard nothing until October, when the same principal officer came to the Quota Management Committee to announce the fishing arrangements for that year. And when I asked how did they come about, we were told it was based on submissions made. And I said, by whom? And we were told, well, whatever was submitted by what was left of the committee and both NIFA and the National Inshore Fisheries Forum. And at the time I wasn't certain if perhaps we had earlier in the year. I found out after the meeting that we had made no submission, so it was basically what was left of the committee or whomever decided what was going to be. But from the meeting we had in March, when we responded, we still haven't had a response.
And on the brown crab working group question, we asked Minister McConnell 3 years ago, like you say about us not being sustainable, we asked for the brown crab working group to be set. We asked Minister McConnell 3 years ago, like you say about us not being sustainable, we asked for the brown crab working group to be set up. 2 years we spent waiting for it to be set up, and when it finally did, they met twice last year. The recommendations, the last meeting was what, September, not long last year, or October? October. And it was a couple of months ago, those 4 recommendations went to the Minister, and it hasn't met since. Like, we want to proceed this, we want to go ahead, we want a viable brown crab fishery going ahead. But if they won't meet with us and discuss it, and the recommendations, one of them, we never agreed to. The other 3 we did, but we took that to be just the initial step, that this was what we could agree to on those days, and then we would meet again and again and again to further it. And here we are now, a full year gone again, and like it's not our fault that, you know, like we want this management stock, we want it in place, like, but what do we do?
I'll move on. I'm aware of the time. Do you believe the Cornwall model is a better managed fishery, and do you believe that we could mirror it?
Oh God, yeah. The hook and line mackerel? Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. In Ireland, inshore fishing accounts for about 7 jobs ashore. For every inshore fisherman, there's 7 shore jobs. That's according to state statistics. In Cornwall, it's 15 to 1. Like they're saying there now, for the pelagic sector this year, the price of mackerel will go up to 3,500 per tonne, euros. That's €3.50 per kg. That's bulk cod fish pumped in, pumped out. We're hook and line and we can't get €1 a kilo. Like, our fish is away, you know, it's a hook and line cod fish, way fresher. We can't get it. And the reason you can't, if you talk to the processors, is because there's not enough of it there for them to set up the market for hook and line. But if there was bigger than 400-tonne quota, and that's another thing I'd like to bring to your attention, there was a survey report that Minister McConnell asked for 2 years ago on the hook and line mackerel fishery to see if 400 tonnes was enough or not. BIM gave it to Bord Bia. Bord Bia tasked a private company to do it. The girls in that company did it, sent back the report. We obviously know what the answer was. It was 400 tonnes wasn't enough. But 2 years later, where's the report? Buried, can't find it, nowhere to be seen. BIM will tell you, well, it wasn't actually a report, it was more of a review, and we're finalising it now. Even though BIM paid €26,900 to the people that put it together 2 years ago, and we've yet to see that report. Why?
I'm just beyond words at this stage. No, that's me. Thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Ward, Deputy Maxwell.
Okay, gentlemen, another committee, and look, quick, maybe I'm from an inland county, and I don't know much about onshore fishing and that, but look, I've been reading up. So, can you answer them? So the bluefin come in, they're migratory fish. They come in, they're feeding on the sprat, the herring, the mackerel in our inshore waters. We're not allowed to catch them. All we're doing is tagging them and releasing them. But the other EU countries, can they come into our inshore, or do they have to just sit and fish? They can fish for them, they have their quota. But then what I'm reading is that fish then can head back out, and the Korean and Japanese can take what they want. Nobody knows, they have no quota. So am I correct in that surmisation? So how far in can the EU boats come, like the English, the whatever, into our waters to fish for the 6 mile? And you're not allowed to fish any of it. Catch one. If you catch it, you tag it as part of the. Okay.
Just to put a feed. Just to put a feed and fatten them up.
For everybody else.
Our European partners.
Okay.
Just put in context, most of the European quota, I think, is taken in the Mediterranean, and what they do is to catch them and they put them in the cages and feed them on. But now when the Northwest Herring opens now in October and November, we'll have cases where the bluefin tuna swimming about, the inshore boats, a lot of the fish, when the fish comes in, they don't catch them till after they're spawned, because there's this last few years there's been no difference in price, and it's more conservation friendly to allow them to spawn before you catch them. If there's no difference in price, why would you do it the other way about? And what happens a lot of that herring is it's block frozen. What the tuna can't eat when they're here, the tuna when they're caught and put into the cages in the Mediterranean, that herring is shipped over there to feed those tuna in those cages. So it's not a case of what they eat here. We're shipping it over behind them.
So we're catching the herring here to block freeze it, to ship it to the Mediterranean, to cage feed, fish farm tuna.
Well, they're not farmed. They actually grow them on.
Okay. All right. Look, I just read. I don't know who came up that we were allowed no quota and all these European vessels can come in within 6 miles of our water and fish away, and then we're tagging these fish for scientific and then Korean and Japanese vessels can mop up everything out there, and we don't know what they're taking. From what I'm seeing of the fishery, and your testimony there about from 1864, family, I suppose your great grandfather, your grandfather, whatever your father has been, if that was happening on an Irish farm, you couldn't get into Dublin with tractors and picketing and whatnot by the farmers, and they'd be right to, in the few months that I've spent looking at the maritime sector, you are being dealt a raw hand here. That's from someone who doesn't really know much about it, and I openly admit that. But I did visit Killybegs, and when you see factories tied up and fish can't be landed, and I know that's no different, but you see what is happening to yourselves, and that's just one. And you hear your testimony today. If we don't change our way, we're going to have no fishing industry here, because, as you say, the three is you'll all give it up because you see no viability in it, and that is a sad reflection, I think, on policy of this country and of fisheries going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Margaret, Deputy. I have Deputy Michael Cahill, who has joined the meeting. You'll recall at the start of the meeting, he gave apologies and said that he would like to come on before the end if he could make it in. So he's joined us online and indicated that he wishes to speak. So the floor is yours, Deputy Cahill, but you might just at the outset confirm verbally that you are on the precincts here of Leinster House. Deputy Cahill, you seem to be muted. Okay, we might have to come back to Deputy Cahill there. So I have a number of questions for you. The vast bulk of what I had intended to say today has already been said. You can rest assured of my support for the inshore sector. I see how important it is socially, culturally, economically, from a heritage point of view. I can see how important it is for coastal communities all around this island, particularly in my own area where I see it up close. And I know the pride that comes with the heritage, the sense of personal pride for those who go to sea and fish and who care deeply about the environment, but also the sense of community pride in coastal communities. One thing that is of huge concern to me is not only the recruitment of new fish, but the recruitment of new fishermen and women. There seems to be an ageing industry, if we're being brutally honest about it. There aren't a huge amount of young people entering the industry, and to be brutally honest, could you blame them? It is a tough station, made much tougher, not by the hard work that it involves, although it is hard work, not by the danger and the risks, although there is danger and risks involved, but by all the issues that we have discussed here today. I'm particularly concerned about the lack of young people who are participating in the Young Fishermen Scheme. Are there improvements that you could suggest to that scheme, or indeed reshaping a whole new scheme that could go some way to encouraging young people to enter into the industry, and particularly the inshore industry? And I obviously take the point, I think you can take it as read, that addressing the issues that have been already raised here today would probably be the biggest single thing you could do to make it an attractive prospect. But are there other things that could be done to encourage young fishers into the industry?
I suppose the main reason people aren't entering it is because they don't see the future in it, or more importantly, that they're not going to make as much money out of it as they used to. Like 30 years ago, I was getting £3 a kilo for velvet crab. Now you get €3 per kilo, you know, and you go into any supermarket shelf in Ireland or throughout Europe, and all you will see is shellfish that was farmed in Asia from very questionable water quality at the very least. Irish consumers, you know, it's far cheaper than ours. I don't know what checks are there, because if you look at the back of some of the packs, there's a picture of, it might be an Irish county, an Irish lighthouse, some geographical area in Ireland, but on the back then you'll see it's from Cambodia, Vietnam, wherever. And lately I've seen from one so-called Irish product and/or India, Thailand and/or India. So if they don't know what country this food came from, how do they know what kind of a fish farm it came out of? And the reason, well, we believe that the price for Irish shellfish has dropped so much is because we cannot compete against this inferior product. Yet Irish processors have been given tens of millions of euros from the Irish state to help them with COVID, Brexit, etc., etc. And what do they go and do with the money? Let's import thousands of tons of foreign fish. The biggest fish ports now in Ireland are Cork Airport, Dublin Airport and Belfast. Those are the biggest fish ports now in Ireland. And every single thing in our supermarket is coming from here. I've even seen scallops now lately from Australia. There are mussels from Chile. Prawns are all India, Thailand, wherever. That's what you're up against. And we just can't compete with that. And people don't know the difference between the health of what we're producing, which is wild caught from non-polluted waters, compared to this stuff. And it's giving us a bad name as well, because if you eat it, it's not very good. So that would be a start to find out why aren't Irish processors. There should be a campaign by the government or by the state, I suppose, to encourage people to buy an Irish product, so that we'll actually get a price for our fish again, and then maybe that in turn would lead to, and that's just one way. And another reason, you're talking about the privatisation of a quota, but before, if you bought a boat, you could see a future that you could get an export and you would be allowed fish mackerel, you would be allowed fish. But now should they know that if they buy a boat, all they can fish for is shellfish for the rest of their lives? No. What's the purpose of that when there's only X amount available? So
I think that sums up the massive contradictions that we see, where Dublin, Cork and Belfast airports are the biggest fishing ports on this island, and an island nation in the North Atlantic, and we're importing seafood from all across the world, from as far afield as Thailand and Australia. It just doesn't make sense, no matter what way you look at it, and that's from an economic point of view, from the social point of view, from the environmental point of view. It can't make sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said we have a healthy product that is, if you want to throw some marketing buzzwords, that's artisan, that's batch caught, that's small and slow food. And we have this really healthy food source on our doorstep that can be caught, that tells a story, that there is a direct connection. And we talk about from farm to fork, but from the sea to the fork, and that there's that level of traceability. So I think government strategy needs to really take that on board. I have one other question I'll go to, and then I'd like to hear your comments on it, and it relates to our coastal infrastructure, and it's something that wasn't mentioned yet today, so that's why I bring it up. Our inshore sector in particular are across the coastline and are dependent on a number of lots of smaller ports and harbours, many of them under the control of the local authority rather than BIM or the department. There's a huge issue with funding where local authorities are only funded for quote-unquote shovel-ready projects, which means that they have to do all the foreshore licensing, all the preparatory work themselves at cost before they can even be considered for funding to do it. And this is leading to issues such as lack of dredging in Quay Helvick in West Waterford, but all across this coast this is being replicated. Is that something that your members are raising with you? And do you think, as I do, that the department needs to relook at that rule to bring it more in line with how other departments fund other capital works by local authorities?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Even when you go and contact your local politician about, say, the local peer now area, they say, for God's sake, it's going to be 3 years foreshore licence, forget about it. You know, it's just mind-boggling the length of time it's going to take, so it's just, they don't bother, like, yeah. That has to be rectified, like. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just on the seafood in Ireland, like, board as a development agency for the fishing industry, yet one of their pats in the back when they were in here with you guys was how they, I'm not sure how the correct wording, but how the work they done in helping processors import product into Ireland more efficiently. So we've had a case where BAM was supposed to be helping us develop, and now they're in turn fighting against us. Like, to have a claim to fame when we have such, like you talk about buzzword, while everything we catch is wild, free range, organic. Everything. Yet we have BAM, instead of supporting that, supporting processors to import, to fight against us. Like, it's
I'll say it for you, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a scandal.
I'd say it definitely, but
it's a scandal what Irish consumers are eating. Like, there's a particular product out there now called Panagius, and I don't want to name the supermarket, but it's in all their fish cakes, and it is farmed in sewers, like, you know, and the people, the factory workers, there's 2,000 people there, and the excrement from the workers goes into the pond to feed the fish that are brought over here. Then, like, it's nuts what's in our supermarkets at the moment, like, and what we're trying to sell. Then the market just collapses, and all, you know, they'll tell us, sure, you know, it's just there's so much of it, and they can't do this, but sure, it's there putting the stuff against us. And like you're on about there, about the sprat and it going for feeding farm salmon. Like, none of us support farm salmon. Like, none of us support it. Like, I mean, wild caught fish compared to 10,000 fish swimming around inside the cage, and the dead zones that, you know, creates around. You have a country like Argentina with half the population living below the poverty line, inflation in triple digits, and they banned salmon farming because of the damage it was causing, and you know, it's for sale against our product. Then it's nuts. Like, it's the toxicity of it compared to the wild caught stuff that we have.
If we could catch it.
Well, thank you for those responses. We're right up against the clock, and Deputy Cal hopefully will be able to come in on this occasion. We'll be able to hear him. So I just want to give him the opportunity of his 10 minutes before we wrap up, if that's okay. So Deputy Cahill, if you can join us, the floor is yours. We can't hear you. Okay, look, I don't think, on this occasion, I don't think the technology is cooperating for Deputy Cal. So is there anybody else of our members here who would like to come in and put a closing question or two? We have another couple of minutes.
Good idea.
Or, yeah, if that's okay, members, yeah. And look, the floor is yours to wrap up.
Yeah, no, just to sort of put the inshore sector into context. We're responsible for almost 95% of the fleet. We're responsible for at least 65% of the direct employment. We're doing all of this with non-quota species, and while it is important to say we do have a fair access to whitefish quotas, we actually only uptake about 5% of the whitefish quotas. We could access a lot more of the pelagic quotas, but we're only talking about 2% of the pelagic quotas. So you'd have to ask yourself, for the largest sector of the industry, providing most employment, providing most I don't know what the word is, onshore employment. That for, like they say, for every one shore boat, every one job on a boat, there's 7 more ashore. We're doing all of this with 5% of the whitefish quota and 2% of the pelagic quota. If we were given fair and equal access to the quotas and the resources, like when we say resources, not just fish, it's money as well, finance, we could double the size of the Irish fleet quite easily when you see what we're doing with so little. Like, just to give one example, that's not far from Deputy Ward's area. One of our members just upgraded to his boat. He's only young, he's under 30. He has 4 guys, himself and 3 more guys in his boat. So that's 4 guys, multiplied by 7 is 28, and those 4, that's 32 jobs in the back end of nowhere. If it was the IDA or anywhere else, you're going to say, I want to put 40 jobs in the corner of the middle of nowhere, to be tripping over themselves to help you. When we talk about financial supports, I was listening that there's going to be financial supports for any Irish industries affected by the US tariffs. When the US tariffs started, the first thing that happened to the inshore sector was they started flying live lobsters from Canada to Europe to directly compete with us, but we're not affected by the tariffs. We were told we weren't affected by Brexit, but every turnaround we were told we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that because of Brexit. Every other sector in the fishing industry was affected by Brexit, except we were told we weren't. So we are only asking for fair and equal access to all resources.
Thank you. And I just noticed that Senator Craughwell has raised his hand here. So, Senator Craughwell, if you'd like to come in very, very briefly, as we're up against time. He's left. Yes. And Senator Craughwell has left the call. Thank you very much to our witnesses. Thank you for being here in person, for engaging in the way that you have, for being as forthright in your analysis of the issues that are affecting your members and the sector and the wider fishing industry. Rest assured that it has been heard here, your concerns. For my part as chair of the committee, I'll be ensuring that the issues that you've raised here are ventilated. They're ventilated on the floor of the Dáil, that they're brought to the Minister, and I know that you're going to meet the Minister now, and I'm sure you'll give a very good account of those issues at that. I also want to thank the members for your participation here today, for the questions, for the really good timekeeping. We're getting better, but also for the quality of the questions and the interaction. It's been, I think, a really illuminating meeting, but we need to do more than that. And I think you put the question really well, Mr. Desmond, that like, what can the committee do? And we can shine a light on bad practice. We can highlight issues where there's definite room for improvement. And as I sat in this chair for the first time, you know, I want this. Ireland needs to have an assertive and an ambitious maritime and fisheries policy. We've never had that in the history of the state. In my reading of things, and there might be others that would disagree, but in my reading, we've never had that. And now is the time we need to do it. We're an island nation. We have this immense natural resource at our disposal, and we need to make sure that it is used in the national interest, that it is used responsibly. And I think that the inshore sector has a critical role to play in that. So thank you once again for your participation, and the best of luck with your meeting this afternoon.
Could I just ask you one question before we go? You know, when you say about reports and review, can this committee make a recommendation? Can you make recommendations to the Dáil?
We can indeed, yeah. And so we may in private session have to discuss what reports we may or may not do arising out of this. We have one report underway at the moment, and that's on sea fisheries protection. That's on the policing of the fishing sector here. Deputy McLaughlin is the rapporteur on that, and that will, I'm sure, contain many recommendations. Those will have to be teased out here. We'll have to discuss them and we'll have to agree on them, the recommendations. But yes, certainly we can make recommendations.
Could we ask you to make a recommendation for financial supports for it? Could you make that recommendation to for us? Because, you know, we're not joking when we say that, you know, the financial income isn't in it at the moment. And it has nothing, it's not the lack of fish, it's the lack of price for that fish. And our overheads have just, you know, it's like the price of bait is 10 times more. Everything, when I said tenfold, I wasn't, but it is like that when I was saying about 30 years ago, the price I was getting for velvet crab, £5 the pot cost that time. You know, it's close to €100 now for a crab pot.
So my position is yes, absolutely. The committee can obviously write to the minister and make a case if that's agreed. But what I might suggest is if you wish to make a submission with regard to the type of financial supports that might work for your sector and for your members, and if you wanted to write to the committee with that submission, that would be able to inform a fuller discussion, and I'm sure then it's something that we as a committee can meet in private and we can discuss it then. But yeah, I mean, I imagine we'd be happy to consider that without agreeing to anything here. But certainly, if you wanted to make that submission, it would definitely be heard. And look, that's a good suggestion for a future meeting, and we'll be meeting in private session next week, and I'll be sure to just raise that issue and see how members feel. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yep. And that concludes the meeting. And just to very formally say that the meeting stands adjourned until the 30th of September 2025. Grumila Magov.